And firstly, welcome. My name is Adam Broadway. I'm the CTO and co-founder of NearMe, and we are a platform as a service which helps brands and entrepreneurs create and power up marketplaces with your own branding. And what we want to discuss today is this topic of why peer-to-peer relationships are critical to your brand's survival. It sounds like a controversial topic to me, and as I said, please use the chat panel as questions arrive. We do have another moderator in the room who is Curtis from our office, Curtis Shelton. So I'm going to just make Curtis an organizer so that he can also be involved in answering any questions. And so thanks for being there in the background, Curtis. So as I said, controversial possibly for brands to think about how peer-to-peer relationships are critical to your brand survival, and particularly with this whole buzz around the sharing economy, collaborative consumption, collaborative commerce, social commerce. There's a whole bunch of buzzwords that we're throwing around. And look, things are evolving and maturing in this space. So there's no definitive right or wrong idea around what the collaborative consumption and peer-to-peer marketplace, where it's heading, but there is a trend, and we want to go through some of the learnings that we've found over the months of being involved with lots of brands and lots of entrepreneurs who are launching marketplaces, to share that knowledge and to get some discussion going. So the history of peer-to-peer as a sharing concept is nothing new. It's definitely been around a long time. It's not a cultural phenomenon for our age. Many Aboriginal-based societies have been using sharing, have been passing down their knowledge, have been bartering. It's been the backbone of how commerce has evolved for some time, up until, of course, the advent of currencies, in which that's a store of wealth, and then people started to use that consistently. But sharing and being altruistic in the approach of being able to, hey, what's mine is yours, we belong to the world together, that's nothing new. And look, the word sharing is a wonderful it's a wonderful word to the altruistic person, and hopefully everybody in this audience is a little altruistic in certain areas of your life, and sharing is a part of that. But is it valid to brands? Because don't brands want to sell? They want to sell products. What's the number one thing that a brand wants to do is provide shareholder value, typically, and making sure that the bottom line is kept intact. So don't we all want to focus on that? And will this peer-to-peer collaborative commerce and sharing economy movement start to cannibalize sales and our bottom line and ultimately shareholder value? Well, that's a good question. We'll sort of stimulate some discussion around that. And the definition of the sharing economy is being defined in various ways. There is words I've already thrown out, like collaborative commerce, social commerce, peer-to-peer, lots of buzzwords. But like social media in recent years, having been an extremely disruptive and transformative medium, transformative in the way that your customers can talk to each other and influence each other, peers and peer groups, influence each other on the choice and the perception of your products and services to other peers. These peers are now able to also connect and swap, trade and resell and share your products and influence the uptake of your products and services. So it's becoming very disruptive. It's not a cultural phenomenon. Now, the sharing economy is really starting to leverage information technology to empower individuals and niche organizations and member-based organizations to start to disrupt brands, where they might be offering the ability to share your goods and services that you provide through other marketplaces other than what you expected, other than your e-commerce website, other than your shop, bricks and mortar shop. And so we're seeing this transformation take place. And it's a pretty big tectonic shift. We're seeing the model first being introduced in the early 1990s by eBay and Craigslist and, of course, Napster. And the psychology of the consumer, in combination with the tech world, it's so disruptive that the implications for e-commerce and the power shift from big centralized institutions to distributed networks of individuals and communities is happening. Passive consumers are becoming empowered providers. And also, of course, with the demographic shift of baby boomers retiring and millennials starting to take over, we have to think about what is the psyche and what is the mindset of these future customers and existing customers. So we're seeing the landscape change. We're seeing products hit the market that are disrupting the hotel industry, like Airbnb, TaskRabbit, Uber, ride-sharing services. And we are seeing and hearing personally at Near Me from so many different brands and entrepreneurs. We've had over 1,500 inbound organic leads that have come through our service since January. And the numbers of the types of ideas and the disruptive types of services that people are going to be launching imminently should have brands sitting up and taking notice. So with that in mind, we can think about how businesses have two options today. They can either compete or they can begin to create with their customer base. And these two options have never been more true as the sharing economy starts to test the values that these new millennials, this new generation of customers are bringing out, and that mindset change. So with that in mind, brands can go either go head-to-head with companies that are part of the sharing economy, or they can work with the audience that matters most to them by looping the customer's voice into the decision-making process, and to be part of these conversations by actually powering up and running these marketplaces for and on behalf of their customers, rather than letting somebody else, some other upstart, do it for them. So this whole idea of mine, the ideology of mine, is changing. People aren't consumers as much. Yes, consumption is happening, and that's, again, something that affects the brand's bottom line. But the idea of having temporary ownership, or not even ownership, accessibility versus ownership, being able to rent, subscribe, and resell, thinking of things as ours rather than mine, is what we're seeing happen. And the reason for that is that there's just huge amounts of underutilized resources that entrepreneurial people and smart, savvy brands are seeing that they can leverage to provide more convenience and more competitive price and more efficiencies using technology, with the underlying requirement there of providing a trusted experience within that brand. And right now, there are platforms that are doing that. Platforms are changing industries. We've seen that happen along the way with various types of disruptive things like content management, e-commerce, and social media. But marketplaces are existing and proving out that the peer-to-peer marketplace is alive and well and thriving. And we're seeing that Craigslist, sort of the Wild West of marketplaces, is doing a booming business, albeit without that trustworthy factor necessarily. But brands are lacking the control that they would otherwise have had without competition from marketplaces. You have seen that eBay as an example is another place where people can go and connect within a marketplace and hopefully have a trustworthy connection to purchase a second-hand brand. Now, Airbnb saw that opportunity and saw that there was a supply-demand issue for a marketplace for people with spare bedrooms or beds, and for people to be able to use them. A niche market, and they spend a lot of money to build that out. We're commoditizing the technology now so that brands don't have to focus in on that technology so much. And so it is becoming less and less of a barrier to be able to power up and provide marketplaces within that particular vertical that your brand is playing in. And trust is the ultimate currency within these marketplaces. ensuring that as a brand you're able to maintain trust, because that is the number one barrier for people entering in the sharing economy and the peer-to-peer marketplaces. In some research that was done by Campbell Mithun, they found that some of these, the biggest issue was that 23% of those surveyed looking to use peer-to-peer marketplaces, 23% won't trust the marketplace or the network. And the other issue was around items that were lost or stolen, so that plays into the trust factor. So an overwhelming majority of people have issues around trust when it comes to interacting within marketplaces. However, something that is powered up by a brand where there is a community of interest or a community of practice which moderates or self-moderates trust within the participants of that marketplace, can begin to build a trustworthy marketplace around the brand, which then gives people a better option than the Wild West marketplaces like Craigslist or eBay. Now, thinking about how the evolution of traditional e-commerce has gone, social media is now evolving to this whole collaborative commerce movement, and peer groups are what power the peer-to-peer economy, and it is the next evolution of e-commerce. I mentioned communities of interest. They're those people who are the hobbyists and enthusiasts, and then we have communities of practice, the specialists whose livelihood depends on their skills in a community of practice. And it's within these groups, communities of interest and communities of practice, that these peer groups, these peer-to-peer networks, are having a huge influence on the buying decisions or the renting decisions or the subscription decisions or the service usage decisions that each of those participants in those in those communities of practice or interest are making. Peer group pressure is the biggest untapped or analyzed opportunity for brands, and the reason that they're not able to utilize it is that they're not participating, for the most part, within a marketplace. They are looking outwards at other entrepreneurs, at other services like Craigslist, like eBay, and seeing them power those marketplaces up and being cut out of the conversation. So getting access to those peer groups to see and hear and learn and analyze and possibly predict what the next move might be in terms of who to market to, who to upsell to, who needs a better service, that's the silver bullet for brands. So what's the real opportunity, though, within the sharing economy, the collaborative consumption movement? Well, in total, and this is for some stats that were derived recently, and within the US, is that the sharing economy is a market with nearly 8,000 businesses, estimated at 110 billion, or just over. And you can see some of these names here that you're all probably able to recognize. And the list keeps growing and growing and growing. And as I said before, communities of interest, the hobbyist and enthusiast, and the communities of practice are all individual sub-segments within these marketplaces that are ripe to be able to tap into and provide a trustworthy marketplace powered by your brand. So we're starting to recognize that the need to be part of this conversation and own the relationship with the participants, the peers, the peer groups within these marketplaces is really important. Now, domain experts are able to now come along, and by domain experts, that could be you within the organization you work for, who is exceptionally knowledgeable about, I don't know, let's make up a thing, the television industry. I happened to talk to somebody yesterday about that. And being a domain expert can possibly tap on the shoulders of key decision makers within the television industry and suggest, look, here's a way that we can save and collaborate as communities of practice, within a community of practice, even though we compete with each other, and create a marketplace that helps us be more efficient. So domain experts are in need of a low barrier to entry so that they can then focus on sales and marketing in the same way that big brands are also wanting to do, to hopefully get closer to their customers and find out more information because they know they're already participating in marketplaces like eBay and Craigslist and others. So we're seeing that e-commerce sales are growing almost towards 20% year on year within the US. It's still a growing marketplace, and there's lots and lots of sub-verticals that are just popping up all the time. It's by no means a slowing industry. E-commerce is growing rapidly. Now, what we believe is that peer-to-peer, within the peer-to-peer marketplace opportunity, is that this is the evolution, that collaborative commerce is the next step in social media evolving to become collaborative commerce. In the same way that content management used to be built by every brand, so you realized that the internet was a place that you had to be. Everyone was jumping onto a web page and throwing up things and search engine optimizing, and so quickly our brand needs to do that. And early days, a lot of brands did it in-house. They built a content management system. Everybody did. And then it became commoditized. We saw WordPress and Drupal and Joomla and Squarespace and Wix and Weebly appear. And then e-commerce, hey, we can start to put our products up on these web pages and charge, and people put their credit card, and trust is starting to take hold. People are being more trustworthy in putting their credit cards on through a shopping cart, and we have SSL certificates for encrypted communication of that information. And so again, trust being the underlying foundation of that transaction. Instead of building it, the technology became commoditized, and we see Shopify, BigCommerce, Volution, and others taking on the role as the empowered technology. And so now, as we see content management that made it possible for everyone to have a voice, and e-commerce made it possible for everyone to be a business and build a brand, and then social media giving everyone a voice to connect to everyone else and to build peer-to-peer peer groups and relationships within their communities of interest and within their communities of practice, we see that content and commerce and collaboration, content management, the e-commerce, traditional e-commerce model, and now social media and collaboration becoming collaborative commerce. And that's where we see the market heading now around peer-to-peer marketplaces, because your customers want to interact with one another. There's no more walled gardens. There may be in as much that, yes, within a community of practice, me as a doctor, I do exist within a walled garden within my industry. I don't talk about medical stuff to the general public, and there may be a member-based organization that facilitates me connecting with my other peers, but that's an example of a community of practice ripe for a disruptive marketplace to be injected. And maybe your brand is in the pharmaceutical industry, and a marketplace could be perfect to power up within the community of practice, the specialists vertical, the member organization that your brand wants to connect with. Your customers are already collaborating. They're using eBay, they're using Airbnb, Craigslist, they're on Facebook, they've got a Twitter account. Their opinions and thoughts around the services and the stuff that they consume, they use, they buy, they resell, they rent, they give away, they share, they barter, that's already out there. And so we want to ensure as a brand that we can connect with those customers. So a quick example of a couple of marketplace examples for brands, and then we'll just open up to general question. As I said, we want to stimulate some conversation around this topic, and I'd like to firstly go through a couple of examples here with some marketplace examples that brands are working through powering. And Cisco is one of them. Here's an example of a Cisco-powered marketplace where they have 4 million user vendors in their network. They've got 35 countries in their network. And in particular, a services-focused marketplace, because we can easily break down the types of marketplaces into two main categories. services and buy-sell products. So products or services. And in the services context, think of how Cisco connecting all of the powering up a marketplace which allows Cisco certified network engineers and educators to connect with people who would like to become a Cisco certified individual or business, and being able to power up a marketplace that connects. It's a matchmaking service where it's moderated by the community, rating the experience in the same way that you might rate an Airbnb experience, so that's something that's self-moderating. The best of the providers of services and the best customers are maintained within that that marketplace. But now I'm able to connect with people that I can book their time and then do a desktop sharing session with them to do some skills transfer. It may be that a buy-sell marketplace around second-hand Cisco equipment would allow their partner network to put up their otherwise sitting in the back of the warehouse rusting away, putting that into a second-hand marketplace, which then those channel partners can create a white-labeled instance inside that Cisco-powered marketplace. So the idea is that brands can start to use their existing brand loyalty and the implied relation or the implied communities that exist, and that may be within a forum informally already happening. You know, people are sharing and swapping within forums very informally, but a formalized marketplace that's been built specifically to facilitate the transaction between a person who has the goods and person who wants the goods, and for then Cisco as a brand to see how that relationship exists and be able to use that for marketing intelligence later is extremely powerful. An e-commerce brand in the clothing industry. Here's an example of where cannibalizing sales is a misnomer for brands. I buy my fashion goods. I then automatically place those goods into a marketplace, which is a private wardrobe. And then that customer who bought through my traditional e-commerce service is alerted within the next couple of weeks or a month to say, hey, hope you enjoyed that purchase. Don't forget, if you ever want to resell that product, we have a marketplace for that. And so traditional e-commerce suddenly becoming leveraged by a marketplace so that the customers can interact with each other. They can share their experiences around the brand. They can blog and microblog within that marketplace. They can resell their product that they had bought and then get credit. So the person purchasing that product in a second-hand as a second-hand item, or renting it as a second-hand item, or swapping it, or bartering for it, is potentially a new customer to that brand, as is the person who sold or rented the goods, because they're probably likely to need something new. And there's other examples of this where a telecommunication company who wants to power up second-hand mobile phone sales, and you might think, well, that cannibalizes our existing new phone sales market. Well, no, because people are doing it anyway. They're already going off to eBay or Craigslist to buy a second-hand phone. So powering up a marketplace for people to buy, rent, swap, barter a second-hand mobile phone, if a brand is powering that up, they suddenly have access to the person who sold that second-hand phone to offer them a new one or a mobile phone plan. And the person who purchased or rented that phone second-hand, they're a potential customer in, say, 9 months' time and can be marketed to. And all the while, this interaction between peers is being analyzed so that only the most trusted peers in the marketplace are allowed access, and the brand can then has permission, because they're powering that marketplace, to reach out with really targeted and relevant marketing messages, and also upsell and cross-sell opportunities. And so Near Me is also powering that in a way that allows cross-market synergies, so that brands that are synergistic between each other, say a recreational vehicle rental marketplace, might want to connect with REI, so that after I've rented an RV, I'm then gently persuaded or asked if I'd like to connect with the REI marketplace to buy a second-hand or rent a second-hand sleeping bag or other camping equipment. So there's lots of synergies that can be built on top of that, on top of the platform, and inevitably the Trust API facilitates making sure that the marketplaces are participated by the most trustworthy people. And then there's the long-term value and why it's important. We've talked about the sharing economy, peer-to-peer marketplaces are taking off. It is e-commerce reinvented, or re-commerce. And underlying that is trust, which as a customer in a marketplace, I should be able to leverage my trust score across all marketplaces, wherever they are, like a credit score. And ultimately being able to, for the brand to do predictive analytics around the types of behaviors and interactions that are going on between peers with each other. And peer group analysis is part of the engine that Near Me in particular is focused in on, and that's based on the same types of algorithms that are used within criminology and terror cell detection. Only we're not talking about criminology here in this context, but the principles apply. It's around relationships and how a brand can use that data and that interaction between peers within their own marketplace and others to get a good trust feel for the customer and their ability to market the right message to them and leverage that. So the opportunity is huge. You as a brand have a user base of followers. How do you get them to connect with one another in the ways that they already do? Because they are doing that. You might want to have a walled garden around your brand, but the customer is empowered now to go wherever they want and talk to whoever they want and learn from so many people. Now, that people are trying to game that. They're trying to create false profiles and false reviews and all those sorts of things. But within a peer group analysis context, you can actually get rid of those types of untrustworthy or false or fraudulent types of reviews as well. So you have a user base of followers. How can you leverage that for them to be able to connect with one another and be part of that conversation? A marketplace is going to improve sales, not cannibalize them. And it will help you to close the loop, to be involved in the full life cycle of your product or service. It's an upsell, cross-sell opportunity. It's a trust-building opportunity. It's a brand recognition opportunity. And it's even an opportunity for revenue as well if you're charging or taking a clip of the transaction within your marketplace, which may or may not be part of your business model. So let's open it up to some questions now. I've done a bit of talking. As I said, this is the first session that we've run here. Wayne, State of Origin, there you go. I'd like to just open it up to questions at this point to discuss some of the ideas that we've brought in around the whole need for brands to be part of peer-to-peer marketing and these collaborative commerce movement, and why the peer-to-peer relationships are critical to your brand survival going forward, particularly with the demographic shift of baby boomers retiring and millennials coming into the fore and driving buying, renting, subscribing, sharing, bartering behaviors in the next generation. So what I'd like to do is just invite you to ask some questions specifically through the little chat panel. And for those of you who are not sure where that is, let's just pop that in here. Please ask a question through the chat panel here. So fire away. Let's use the chat panel to initiate a conversation. And I can also unmute your microphone as we go here. Any questions, any thoughts, any rebuttals? It's very quiet. I'm sure you're all looking at your notepad here. Here we go. Sachin's asked a question. Hi Adam, why would someone list their service in your marketplace powered by Near Me? Okay, that's a great question. Firstly, Near Me as a marketplace platform is fully white labeled, so a brand would leverage the Near Me platform with their own branding. So they have complete white labeled opportunity on Near Me. Now, why not eBay or Craigslist? They could. You use all means at your disposal to reach your customers. So it's non-inclusive. It's not exclusive, sorry. But what the difference between a brand using a platform like Near Me or other platforms that they can put their own branding across and control is that you as the brand have access to the data, and you can access information that certainly eBay or Craigslist will never give you. They're not going to give you access to the peers that connect with each other, and they're not going to maintain your brand equity because it's all about them. It's like also saying, I'd like to create a web page, I'm going to do it on Facebook. And the moment you send people to your Facebook fan page or product page, guess where everybody goes? Off to their alerts to click a like on the latest cat picture that their friend put up. So you lose access to control the conversation. Greg has asked about the commercial model for Near Me. So Near Me as a platform, and I'm happy to talk about other concepts other than just Near Me as a sales pitch as well, so please throw some curly ones at us. But thanks for the question, Greg. The model is a setup fee and a monthly hosting fee. So where you would spend hundreds of thousands of dollars developing technology for powering a marketplace, we already have done that. And we've commoditized in the same way we talked about content management used to be built by everybody and then it got commoditized. And then e-commerce, people used to build that piecemeal and then it became commoditized. Social media, enterprise tools became commoditized. Near Me is commoditizing peer-to-peer marketplace for services and buy-sell markets, allowing brands to have their own branding and to have a master franchise and franchisee model within the platform. And so we just charge a nominal fee in terms of setup and the access to the system on a monthly basis. So that's our business model. Some great questions coming through. This is awesome. Jack's asked, I'm thinking sharing is better suited as a local thing in most cases, and that's a great point, Jack. Sharing in terms of, I've got a lawnmower and you don't need to buy one because I have one, neighbour to neighbour is really cool, and definitely a local neighbourhood thing is important, particularly around trust and not wanting to have just some stranger come to the house to borrow my lawnmower that it might not ever see again. That's where brands like Home Depot can come in. And if you notice that probably within one block of your house, you don't really know the people around you. Sadly, you don't really know people 2 or 3 houses away. So yes, I do think that a platform for providing neighborhood-based sharing is good, but in the context of brands like Home Depot, if they're a distribution center of tools. So if they powered a marketplace where people met to then do the exchange and provided other services, obviously upsell, like if I'm borrowing a lawnmower, maybe I need some fuel and some oil. If I'm borrowing a power tool, maybe I need some chain lubrication. I think brands have a place to help facilitate that because they can provide the additional services to ensure a trustworthy interaction. But yes, I do totally agree that sharing is best suited in a local case, but imagine if you could then get economies of scale by linking all those locals together and then also powering and maintaining a trust score for people within that marketplace locally and then say regionally and then at a state level, country level and across country borders. Your trust score should carry across all the marketplaces that you interact with, and that's something that we're addressing on our platform. When building a marketplace from scratch, what's more important, building the seller side or the buyer side? Oh, good question. I think it's going to depend on your experience and the market that you're approaching. If you're focused in on a market which you know already has lots of suppliers, then getting focusing in on the buyer side or the renter side is probably the most important part. It's going to depend market to market. One of the ways that we suggest people approach going to market with an idea for a marketplace is to connect with local member organizations. Or we talk about communities of practice, or I mention that word a lot, a community of practice like accountants. Accountants are a community of practice, and then there's the Australian Institute of Certified Practicing Accountants and the American Institute of Certified Practicing Accountants. If it's a service that particular audience would like, I would work with a membership-based organization, because a member organization has both the supply and the demands, usually within a particular vertical industry. So if you're a domain expert and you know all the suppliers, then you want to focus on the demand side. If you know that there's huge demand for people who want to rent mountain bikes in San Francisco because you're part of a bike riding community, you know the demand is there, then you need to focus on the supply side. But either way, you're right, there is a supply-demand issue, and that's something that brands already have solved. They have both the supply and the demand, and that's why having a brand focus in on building a marketplace makes a lot of sense. Lorraine's asking, I'm finding explaining to people before going to market from the traditional business model versus collaborative models. Any tips? Market from the traditional business model. I might need to just get clarification on that, Lorraine. Trying to explain, I guess, a collaborative model versus traditional model. Probably the case study example is the best approach in explaining that to a traditional business model, or person that's thinking in terms of the traditional business model. Instead of just starting up a traditional e-commerce website, think about, yes, powering up a traditional e-commerce website that has the ability to allow the buyer to also be the seller, because you're going to then have people coming back over and over again. Inevitably, people get bored of a product or they want to upgrade. For that brand and that site that just sold the item to offer the ability for that customer to resell makes a lot of sense, because it brings people back to the site, creates longevity around the use of that particular site. And the traditional e-commerce model of my shop, one-to-many selling is changing. It's many-to-many. The buyers become the sellers. And so explaining it in context too, it's not cannibalizing the sale, because people are already using marketplaces to sell the second-hand phone or train set or baby clothes or prams, or find a dog walker, or find somebody who can clean their house. These two-sided marketplaces just going viral. So I would suggest maybe use that approach, Lorraine. I hope that made sense. And we actually have a white paper that we're going to be sending out too. We have a 30-page white paper that goes through a lot of this detail. So please reach out to me after the session for a copy of that. We're just putting the finishing touches on it, and it goes into a lot of detail, Lorraine, that can help you to sell the concept of the collaborative model. I also look at demographics and the changing mindset of customers, going from the consumer mindset to I need to have what the next door neighbor has, to more of the I'm aware of the environment, it's access versus ownership, and that's where the millennial change is in the next generations. Collins asked, Adam, as invariably sharing economies are operating in what are normally regulated marketplaces, serviced by traditional players, insurance always seems to become an important factor. Are you finding that there are insurance companies that are recognizing this movement and writing insurance policies specifically for peer-to-peer sharing marketplaces? Yes. Great question. Regulatory issues aren't keeping up, both regulatory in terms of legal and insurance, and even in some cases currency. You're seeing cryptocurrency go crazy at the moment. It's a great question, Colin. Yes, we're seeing some underwriter insurers actually doing deals with big marketplaces to solve that very problem, where instead of somebody saying, well, I'm using my private vehicle to now be a taxi driver and I had an accident and now whose insurance covers that? It's being solved, and we're seeing the forward-thinking insurance companies jumping on this because that's the direction it's heading. And right now, I think the incumbents are realizing that actually we're getting an insurance policy paid for here and here and here, and they're kind of tripling up on their insurance policies. And the smart ones are going, well, hang on, under these terms of use, we'll put an umbrella policy together. And in fact, Near Me as a platform is also able to, we're in discussions with a number of underwriters to offer better rates to marketplace owners. It's a cumbersome and a long negotiation because a lot of these incumbent industries and regulatory authorities just aren't equipped to move fast nor even comprehend the pace of change because of what technology is allowing, and particularly peer-to-peer marketplaces are causing to happen in the shake-up of these industries, like the taxi industry with Uber and Lyft and rideshare, and the hotel industry with Airbnb. Mindful that legislation and policy writers are generally motivated by, dare I say it, what's the word, campaign contributions. And so there's a direct causation between the amount of money that lobby groups put into the pockets of legislators. This is just common knowledge, I'm not saying anything new. And so you'll see lobby groups going out and causing changes to laws that may be in favor of peer sharing and may not. We're seeing that brands can get around that issue by having their own marketplaces where they're not the ones that are then paying lobbyists to change laws. They're actually part of the solution, not fighting against the huge tidal wave of change that's happening. So we'll watch that space. There's a number of organizations that are lobbying. And also we're seeing things like Airbnb in New York, where New York wanted their cut of the slice of the action. Taxes weren't being paid by Airbnb hosts that hotels were paying. So there's something not right there. There's a disparity between what one person can do and another, and rightly so. The hotel lobby group gets up in arms, and Airbnb says, well, we'll solve that. We'll pay that tax. So, you know, there's ways and means around it. I think everybody is just unsure of how that's moving forward, but it is moving forward. Insurance, with ambition to grow the seller or buyer side as quickly as possible, there is an increased risk. Integrity of sellers, safety of buyers, exactly, and that's why trust, Colin, is going to be a major part of underpinning the success of a marketplace. And that's why we're seeing new marketplaces that are focused in on a niche, on a vertical, on a community of practice or a community of interest where there's implied trust, where the people within the television industry don't want to risk their reputation being tarnished with others, even if they're competitors, where we see that people who are lawyers and part of the bar association within a marketplace that they would want to participate in, they don't want to tarnish their reputation with others. And of course then that breeds the requirement for moderation and dispute resolution, which PayPal and other services have already built and commoditized in a way. So they're things that we're also looking to integrate. I'm finding explaining traditional... Oh, okay, I think I answered yours, Lorraine. And I still sound Australian. Well, that's a good thing, Wayne, although I've been here in the US for a while now. Diego's asked, Adam, I'm creating a startup, no conventional tourism by local people in Colombia. Here many tourist operators have no conventional products. How can I join the regular market, legal operators with particular operators to a unique peer-to-peer marketplace based at sharing economy? All right, Diego, I think I understand your question. Firstly, I would... in creating your startup or your marketplace around tourism by local people, trust and ratings is a good way to invite those who are part of the conventional way of doing business to also play a part, in the same way that we're saying to brands, hey, you need to look at how you can power up a marketplace to connect and be part of the conversation with your customers who are already using third-party marketplaces. You could be saying to the legal operators, hey, look, why don't you become part of my marketplace, and you can have a white-labeled part of it. Now, there's a couple of ways that you might want to enter the market. Firstly, by just throwing it out there and having a lot of locals in a very focused geography be part of it, and then be mindful that the operators in the legal operators are probably going to be part of it too. An example of something where early days with one of the marketplaces that's on Near Me, it's called Desks Near Me, which is like Airbnb for office space. We thought that some of the larger executive office space providers would not want to be part of the marketplace. We thought maybe they see it as competition. We also thought that property brokers who try to put people into large amounts of commercial real estate would also hate us. Totally the opposite. They saw it as lead flow. They saw it as a business opportunity to provide a superior service, and they saw it as lead flow. So I think that actually could be addressed, Diego, by saying to those operators, look, this is going to be great deal flow for you rather than competition with you. It's going to happen, so you might as well be part of my marketplace where I'm going to be open-armed with you and help you get better quality customers. Adam, you referenced the importance of trust in a marketplace and the general lack of trust in a marketplace like Craigslist. How is Near Me ensuring a high degree of trust in your marketplaces? Well, there's traditional methods such as ratings and reviews and comments. That's one way. There's the customer service tools which allow people to have a conversation. There's integrating the Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram accounts so that your profile as a marketplace participant can be determined to be pretty trustworthy. And then we have some pretty clever, smart algorithms, and I mentioned it earlier around the idea of using criminology, peer group analysis, to put a trust score on people. And so that will be important. Ultimately, the success or failure of a marketplace rests on the trustworthiness of the participants. So there's a number of ways that we're addressing that. I think the success also depends, this is from Sachin, I think the success also depends upon the various options platforms such as Near Me could provide to each specific marketplace compared to listing, say, a carpool in Craigslist or so on. Correct, Sachin, and we're being very flexible in the way we approach the way that marketplace owners such as yourself can create a marketplace, configure it, make sure that it's offering the right feature set for the best possible user experience for your customers. And that's why we're very hands-on when we're talking to brands and entrepreneurs to make sure that we understand what the marketplace is that they're entering into and also understand what the minimum viable product would be so that we can ensure that we deliver something that actually will make a difference. As I said, it's also early days, so we're all learning from this. All we know that this is not a fad, it's a trend, and so being part of the trend is important for you as an entrepreneur and for us to be able to help learn with you and offer the features that make sense. So we're always constantly adapting and evolving in that way. Any other questions? Great questions. Thank you very much, everybody, for the interaction through the chat panel so far. I want to ask if you've got any more questions. And is there any big brands in the room? Has somebody specifically from a brand that would like to throw out? Let's see, Colin's got a note here. Brands creating a marketplace. Are they wanting to control the conversation? Cisco, are you finding that they are allowing other competitive brands to participate in that marketplace? A very good question, Colin. And I guess the answer at this point is not sure. My guess is that you probably won't see competitors necessarily participating. They would have their own marketplace, but then maybe there is something to be said for what we call cooperative competition, where brands are looking at how they can leverage each other and build up a market base of customers who are very trustworthy. So maybe they would allow competitors. For the immediate term, I don't see that happening. I see that they would want to be very focused on their brand equity, their brand loyalty, and providing it's another way for them to, yes, as we said, own that conversation, or be maybe not own, but be a part of the conversation. I think the word control is not something easily done within a marketplace. People can say and rate and involve themselves as they would and as they want. I think if it's respectful, even if it's contrary to what the brand wants to hear, it's better than them being out somewhere where the brand doesn't have access to that conversation and not realizing that there's an issue that they need to fix. phone brands are creating, okay, let's just make sure I get things right. Would you not get cynicism from consumers where brands seem to control the marketplace? I think yes, you would. Anytime a customer or a group of peers sees a brand trying to control things, there would be a level of cynicism, depending though on the value that they're getting. You know, ultimately everybody's asking, what's in it for me? Whether you're a traditional customer, inverted quotes, where you need to buy and own everything, or you're a millennial who believes in the social good, the global good, and it's not about ownership, it's about access, it's still what's in it for me. It's still, do I get my needs met, my wants met? So I think for a brand to be able to address the what's in it for me and provide a great user experience, that's probably higher on the hierarchy of needs versus being seen to be controlled. I think very quickly marketplaces sort out those that are good marketplaces from bad simply by the peer-to-peer interaction that takes place within that marketplace. If people aren't enjoying it, you'll hear crickets when you go in there. Just like a forum that might be full of just product placement and advertorial versus a forum which is moderated by a brand owner who really wants to help their customers. They get sorted out pretty quick. Angela has asked, can you give us an example of how Home Depot or Nokia could get involved in this space? An earlier example, Angela, I'm not sure if you heard it, but let's say for Nokia, second-hand mobile phones is a big industry, and you'll go to eBay or Craigslist and find lots and lots of them. And I've heard horror stories from friends who've bought their second-hand phone from eBay and they got a nice box with a photograph of the phone inside, and then they had to go through the dispute resolution thing, and it was just a scam. But the market is ripe for a brand like Nokia to say, well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to power up a marketplace where people can buy or sell or resell mobile phones, because as a brand, Nokia wants access to people with phones, and as a seller, let's say Adam Broadway comes along, he's going to sell his second-hand phone, whatever brand it happens to be, and I go to the Nokia powered marketplace and I put it up there, and I'm a trustworthy guy and I've got a good profile, and I might use my Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter accounts to verify I am who I say I am, and I don't want my reputation tarnished, so I am going to be a good participant in the marketplace. Nokia, once I've sold my phone, sees me as a brand new possible customer because they can upsell me to either a new phone or a new phone plan. The buyer, let's say, Angela, you bought my phone. As a second-hand phone owner, in 6 months to 9 months' time, you would be a perfect candidate for Nokia to then go and deliver a marketing message to say, Angela, we realize that you bought the phone from Adam 9 months ago. Here's a special offer for you to upgrade that phone to a better one. And here's a plan. Also, at the time of purchase, Nokia might offer you a mobile phone plan which is more competitive than the one you're currently on. Otherwise, losing access to that conversation if it's just taking place on some other website like eBay. Richard's asked, do you see value in offering comparison between the shared asset and comparable commercial service or goods? Yes, definitely. And one of those comparisons would be convenience. So you can, sometimes it's hard to put a value on convenience. You know, when you go to the Walmart or the chemist shop in Australia and you see the bottle of hairspray, and the smaller ladies' purse-sized hairspray is more expensive than the really big, high-value hairspray bottle. People are willing to pay for convenience. So yes, as long as those comparisons aren't just the hard costs, but also the comparison on convenience, trustworthiness of the supplier, and maybe there's some other services provided by the provider of the service that you wouldn't normally get. So if you're buying from me, I know all about my second-hand mobile phone or my jet ski. I'm going to tell you how to use it when you either rent it or buy it from me. So yes, definitely comparisons. The other idea, Richard, is also to provide a rent-buy type of marketplace. So maybe the brand is saying, well, rent it, try it before you buy it, and we'll credit you the rental amount to then go and buy it later. And of course the insurance question comes in there, which is solvable when you have large amounts of customers in a marketplace, that you can then go to an insurance underwriter and have a competitive policy drawn up. Wayne's asked, I've worked collaboratively with partners in about 80 countries in executive search with the large fees involved, and trust is what sorts everything. In 20 years, I've only had one unresolved dispute. No matter how many rules are put in place, if you don't wish to work in collaboration with another, it is easy. You don't. It becomes very self-regulating. Exactly right. Self-regulation is what happens in marketplaces, and why wouldn't brands want to be part of a trustworthy marketplace that self-regulates? Great example, Wayne. In other words, that's, what you're doing is a matchmaking service, and as the market maker, Wayne is saying that he is an executive search and executive connector, resource placement expert. He is the market maker and sits between the buyer and the seller, or the provider and the host and the renter. So trust is what makes sure that he maintains longevity in that marketplace. Key to trust is authentication of buyers and sellers, ensuring that they are real people. This dynamic can slow the rollout of marketplaces substantially. Are there technologies that are mitigating this step? Yes, there are some, I guess what we call identity verification APIs that are out there, and they vary from country to country, and they also vary from industry to industry. That's why with brands working with member organizations that we help facilitate, that process can be automated, because working with a member organization, they generally have the members' stats and their qualifications on file. And so for a brand or a member organization that already has an active forum, or at least access to the supplier side of a service, they can also provide ways to accelerate the verification of the marketplace participants. Obviously, if you're starting fresh and you're just doing a sales and marketing, just going out and marketing your marketplace fresh with, just AdWords and blogs and email marketing and doing webinars and white papers and driving organic traffic to sign up, then you have other ways to try and make sure people are authentic, and that is, again, through social media connections. Yes, you can fake credentials on Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and all the others, but over time, if you're seeing, you can set a trust factor on a particular account based on how many times they've interacted, and also the people within their peer group. That's why peer group analysis is really critical to this sort of equation. It's not how many Facebook friends you've got. It's what are the interactions between a core group of 5 people you have consistently over time. That's the difference. It's not how many Twitter follows you have, because they could all be automated bots. I could go to Mechanical Turk and pay people 20 cents for every account they create and link to me. I could AstroTurf links to my website. I could do the same to my social media accounts. It's about the interaction taking place within a core group of peers, and that's why we're seeing that for us it's about a longer term strategy, not a froth and bubble, go quick to market. Now you can go quick to market if you're an established brand with an established market and member base or customer base. That's something you can do. But for the rest of us, slow and steady wins the race. The marketplace should have credentials on file, passport, driver's license, etc. Yeah, depending on the type of marketplace, Colin. Some people don't require that. I know for us, we've got a few marketplaces that do require a secure file upload, which goes through a workflow process so that the marketplace owner can validate and vet each service provider in the marketplace, and they do that using a driver's license or passport. Now that can be automated in time. They're initially testing the market and getting a core set of good quality marketplace providers, and then they're going to scale up over time. Any more questions? We're right on the hour now, so wow, that's gone fast. Really enjoyed this, and as I said, it's our first webinar on this topic. John's asked, can I get a recorded copy? Yes, I have been recording this, and I'd like to just invite you to reach out to me, Adam at near-me.com, to ask for that white paper, and we'll put together a list and send that out to everybody who would like a copy. And I'd like to thank everybody for coming along. It's been a real privilege to take up some of your time in your day, your morning, evening, afternoon, and I hope that you got something out of this. And we'll be refining the content and giving back to you that are interested all of the learnings that we find out over time. As I said at the start, we've been talking to over 1,500 entrepreneurs and brands now in the idea around the sharing economy, collaborative consumption, and how that how peer-to-peer marketplaces are critical to brand survival. We're wanting to give back more and more of that learning over time. So please reach out.